Clarity is not a luxury afforded to the privileged few. It is a responsibility that rests on the shoulders of anyone who wants to navigate life with purpose rather than drift in confusion. To live without clarity is to live reactively, tossed from one demand to the next by external forces you haven't consciously chosen, when you don't define your values, your goals, and your non-negotiables someone else. An ideology, a culture, a person will define them for you, and often not to your benefit. The first step toward personal sovereignty is the brutal, sometimes uncomfortable act of asking, what am I doing and why? People often claim they don't know what they want, but what they really mean is they haven't sat still long enough to face the chaos inside. It takes courage to sit with your desires and question their roots. Are they truly yours, or are they remnants of someone else's expectations? Clarity isn't about knowing everything. It's about being willing to strip away the lies you've been telling yourself. And that requires honesty, which is far more rare and more costly than intelligence. Without clarity, even hard work is wasted. A person can run at full speed for decades in the wrong direction and wonder why they never arrived. Business is not progress, and effort is not value unless it's applied toward a coherent, meaningful target. If your vision is blurry, your strategy will be scattered. Clarity forces you to prioritize, and prioritization forces you to admit that not everything matters equally. Some things, in fact, may not matter at all. People who lack clarity often surround themselves with distraction. They stay in relationships that drain them, jobs that diminish them, or routines that numb them, all because naming what they truly want would force them to face the sacrifices required to pursue it. Clarity demands sacrifice, and this is why many avoid it. It's easier to say, I'm confused, than to say, I'm afraid of what I must give up. But you cannot transform your life without the willingness to sever ties with what keeps you small. Clarity also makes you dangerous to manipulators. The clearer you are on what you value, the harder you are to control. Someone who knows what they want, and more important, what they will not tolerate, cannot be easily swayed by guilt, approval-seeking, or social pressure. They are rooted, not reactive. They operate from intention, not impulse. In a world that thrives on ambiguity and half-truths, clarity is an act of rebellion. There's a moral dimension to clarity that many overlook. When you are clear, you stop wasting other people's time. You don't lead them on, string them along, or lie to them because you're unsure of yourself. You either commit or you withdraw. You speak directly, not vaguely. You become someone whose words and actions align, and that alignment builds trust in others, even if they don't always like what you say. Clarity is not always kind, but it is honest. And in the long run, honesty is the deeper kindness. Clarity also anchors you in moments of crisis. When pain hits, when people betray you, when life turns on you, your clarity becomes your compass. If you know what matters most, you will not be seduced by every short-term escape or distraction. You will endure suffering without losing your direction. That is how people survive storms. They don't need to know every step, but they must know what they refuse to abandon. Clarity grows through confrontation. Confrontation with your patterns, with your fear, with your apathy. You don't find clarity in comfort. You find it in the decision to stop lying to yourself about who you are, what you want, and what you're doing here. And until you commit to that level of truth, your actions will always be fragmented, your words diluted, and your purpose undefined. The idea that transformation happens in a single grand gesture is a myth sold to those who fear the grind of daily effort. In reality, it is the accumulation of small, deliberate actions repeated over time that carves out a life of substance. Most people underestimate the power of repetition. They think if a single workout doesn't change their body, or if one honest conversation doesn't fix a relationship, then effort itself must be futile. But transformation is a slow erosion of the false self, built moment by those willing to persist through monotony. Consistency is not about intensity. It's about showing up even when you don't feel like it, especially when the results aren't yet visible. A person who does 10 push-ups every day for a year builds more strength, physically and mentally, than someone who trains intensely for 1 month and then burns out. Your destiny isn't determined by what you do once when inspired, but by what you do repeatedly when you're inspired. Discipline is what carries you when motivation fails, and destiny favors those who endure. Every small decision you make is a vote for the person you're becoming. When you choose the healthy meal, when you hold your tongue instead of speaking from anger, when you spend an hour learning instead of numbing yourself with entertainment, you cast a vote for a future version of yourself that is more competent, resilient, and free. The problem is not that people don't know what to do. It's that they don't believe doing it consistently will matter enough. But that disbelief is exactly what ensures failure. Momentum is built in the micro. It is not the size of the action, but the direction it points that matters most in the beginning. A small step in the right direction creates emotional proof. I'm capable of change. And once you have that proof, you're more likely to take another step. But without movement, stagnation festers, and over time, inaction hardens into identity. People begin to say, this is just how I am, not realizing they've simply chosen not to act long enough for change to feel unreachable. Small, consistent actions bypass the ego's demand for perfection. The ego wants change to be dramatic, visible, and applauded. But the soul seeks transformation in secret, away from the need to be seen. There's quiet dignity in working on yourself when no one is watching. You read 1 page a day, stretch for 5 minutes, reflect on your flaws, forgive one person. No parade, no applause. Just silent progress, stacking up over weeks and years until it rewrites your identity. Consistency creates integrity. When your actions align with your values on a regular basis, you begin to trust yourself. And when you trust yourself, your mind quiets. You stop second-guessing, overthinking, and outsourcing your decisions to others. You walk with more certainty because your behavior confirms your beliefs. Integrity isn't about moral superiority. It's about internal coherence. A consistent person isn't perfect, but they are predictable in a way that earns respect. It's also in small daily effort that mastery is born. The most skilled people in any domain, music, writing, fitness, business, aren't the ones who had the best tools or started with the most talent. They are the ones who endured boredom. Mastery is boring. It's doing the same thing over and over until you refine the edges into elegance. And in a world addicted to novelty, those who commit to the mundane craft of repetition eventually separate themselves from those who chase shortcuts. Small, consistent actions also generate compound returns. Like interest on money, the benefits may seem negligible at first, but they grow exponentially. A person who writes 300 words a day finishes a book in a year. Someone who invests in their relationships daily reaps the loyalty and connection others spend a lifetime chasing. There's no secret to success beyond the courage to start small and the faith to keep going when it feels insignificant. Sacrifice is not a noble concept reserved for ancient myths or religious rituals. It is the very foundation upon which a meaningful life is built. Every pursuit worth having, wisdom, character, love, or purpose, demands something in return. You cannot become who you are meant to be without first surrendering who you were. And the more significant the transformation, the deeper the sacrifice required. People want fulfillment without discipline, intimacy without vulnerability, success without suffering. But the structure of reality itself doesn't permit that kind of transaction. To sacrifice is to voluntarily give up something of lesser value in pursuit of something greater. This is not loss for the sake of loss, it's investment. The individual who chooses to wake up early, who delays gratification, who takes on responsibility without immediate reward is sacrificing comfort now for strength later. It's not martyrdom, it's strategy. Life forces you to give something up either way. You either sacrifice now on your terms or life extracts payment later on its own terms. And the cost is always higher when it's involuntary. We are taught to believe that happiness comes from accumulation, of pleasure, of possessions, of praise. But real joy emerges from choosing what to let go of. You sacrifice your pride to maintain peace in a relationship. You sacrifice convenience to live with integrity. You sacrifice ease to earn competence. And the inverse is also true. Avoid sacrifice and you inherit chaos. Because the moment you begin to serve only your impulses, you hand over control to forces that will not lead you anywhere good. Sacrifice structures time. When you defer the immediate in favor of the eternal, you align your life with something higher. The student who studies instead of partying, the parent who works a second job for their children, the elder who continues to mentor despite their fatigue. These are acts of sacred ordering. They carve a future out of the unknown. Without sacrifice, time collapses into a series of disconnected pleasures and pains. With sacrifice, time becomes a meaningful narrative moving toward an aim. There's a dangerous cultural narrative that says you should never have to give anything up to be happy. That if something costs you your comfort, it must be wrong for you. But this is a lie that breeds weakness and entitlement. The truth is that maturity begins the moment you stop asking, what can I get? And start asking, what am I willing to give up? This shift in mindset separates children from adults, victims from victors, and consumers from creators. All growth requires a death of some kind. The death of old beliefs, outdated identities, toxic attachments. The reason so few people experience true transformation is not because they don't want to change, but because they are unwilling to grieve what change demands. They want resurrection without crucifixion. But nature does not permit that. A seed must die to become a tree. An ego must shatter to make room for the soul. Sacrifice is the sacred threshold between who you are and who you could become. Sacrifice also clarifies values. You discover what truly matters not by what you say, but by what you're willing to suffer for. If you claim to love someone but refuse to make time for them, your actions expose your real priorities. If you say health matters but avoid discipline, then comfort is your actual God. Sacrifice doesn't just build character, it reveals it. It cuts through illusion and sentiment, forcing you to confront what you worship with your time, energy, and attention. Lastly, sacrifice is what binds individuals into community. A society that rejects sacrifice collapses into self-interest and fragmentation. But when people voluntarily bear burdens for others, whether in families, friendships, or nations, they create the conditions for trust, cooperation, and legacy. A civilization itself is the result of shared sacrifices across generations. When you choose to carry your load, and perhaps a bit more than your share, you don't just improve your life, you uphold the invisible scaffolding of the world. Before anything meaningful can grow, there must be order. Chaos, in its raw and unrefined state, does not yield life. It consumes it. The The first act of creation in every culture and in every myth begins with dividing the sea from the land, the light from the dark, the known from the unknown. You cannot build a stable house on shifting ground. The same is true for your mind, your habits, your relationships. If the foundation is unstable, expansion becomes dangerous, even destructive. People are often eager to chase greatness, to scale new heights, to chase ambitions. But if your inner world is cluttered, if your priorities are a mess, if your routines are inconsistent, if your values are conflicted, then expansion only amplifies disorder. Growth without structure leads to collapse. It's not ambition that destroys people, it's the attempt to leap without first doing the discipline. Sometimes boring work of ordering what already exists. Order is not the enemy of creativity or freedom. It is their prerequisite. It is only when your house is clean, your time is managed, your relationships are honest, and your mind is settled that you can begin to explore with any confidence. The person who avoids order in the name of spontaneity isn't living freely. They're drifting. Real freedom is not the absence of structure. It is the ability to act with precision and direction within a defined space. The individual who neglects order in favor of growth is like a tree that reaches for the sky without rooting itself in the soil. The wind will come, and it will fall. The successful artist learns technique before improvising. The effective leader learns to follow before commanding. The wise elder was once the disciplined youth. Each of these examples points to the same principling: order is not optional. It is the cost of sustainable expansion. You also can't fix what you refuse to examine. People avoid creating order in their lives because it demands self-confrontation. It requires you to see the mess in your habits, the contradictions in your beliefs, the patterns you inherited without thinking. Bringing order means sorting, discarding, refining. It means saying no to what is trivial so you can say yes to what is meaningful. Without this painful clarity, your life becomes a noisy, directionless echo chamber in a world that worships the new, the next job, the next relationship, the next opportunity. Very few people understand that deep fulfillment is often hidden behind the discipline of tending to what's already in front of you. The garden does not expand until the weeds are pulled. The business does not scale until the systems are tightened. The soul does not mature until the shadows are faced. Expansion, in its healthiest form, is the reward for stewarding order faithfully. Order doesn't mean rigidity. It doesn't mean controlling every variable or obsessing over perfection. It means establishing a structure strong enough to handle complexity. Think of a riverbank. It constrains the water, yes, but also allows it to flow powerfully. Without the riverbank, the water would disperse into useless puddles. In the same way, the structure you impose on your time, your thoughts, your behaviors, this is what gives direction to your potential. There's a paradox at the heart of life. If you want to go far, you must first go deep. And going deep means anchoring yourself in something solid. Values discipline a hierarchy of priorities. Only then can you stretch outward into the world with strength, integrity, and resilience. Expansion without order is indulgence. Expansion after order is transformation. Resilience is not bestowed in moments of applause or recognition. It is forged in the invisible, often excruciating silence of private struggle. It's built in the nights when no one is watching, when pain is not shared and comfort is not offered. It is in those dark moments, those solitary confrontations with doubt, fear, and failure, where character is either formed or fractured. People admire resilience in others, but they often fail to recognize the hidden cost behind its development. You don't become resilient by avoiding hardship. You become resilient by walking straight into it and refusing to be undone. The human psyche isn't strengthened by coddling. It is strengthened by confrontation, by bearing weight you didn't think you could carry and discovering you're stronger than your assumptions. The world won't always give you a fair fight, but it will always offer you the opportunity to respond. That response is where resilience is born. The most powerful kind of strength is quiet. It doesn't scream for validation. It doesn't parade itself. It doesn't need an audience. It's the kind of strength that keeps showing up after defeat, keeps speaking truth in the face of rejection, keeps holding the line when everything in you is tempted to retreat. That kind of strength, resilience, is earned in the daily battles no one ever sees or celebrates. Resilience is also not a product of a single grand moment of endurance. It's cumulative. It's built in the tiny acts of defiance against despair. Getting out of bed when your mind tells you to stay down, telling the truth when lying would be easier, trying again when you've already failed 10 times. These small private victories become the scaffolding that holds you up when the storms of life try to bring you down. There is a danger in believing that strength can be outsourced. No one can fight your battles for you. Support is valuable, yes, but there are parts of your journey that must be walked alone. There are doors that only open when you've wrestled with the questions no one else can answer for you. This is the hidden economy of resilience. The more you invest in facing yourself, the more you gain an unshakable internal fortitude. Every scar has a story, and every story is evidence of endurance. But those scars aren't just trophies. They are reminders of lessons learned the hard way. The private battles teach you where your real limits are, not the limits fear sets for you, but the limits truth reveals through effort. And when you learn how to fight and not flinch, how to fall and still rise and stop seeing adversity as a curse and start seeing it as a necessary tutor, you cannot fake resilience. You can fake confidence, fake positivity, fake strength. But resilience is only revealed in pressure. When the job collapses, when the loved one dies, when the betrayal cuts deep. Those are the moments that prove whether what's inside you is hollow or hardened. And if you've faced your private battles honestly, you'll find something in yourself that refuses to quit. People want the outcome of resilience, stability, wisdom, inner strength, but they often don't want the path that builds it. And that path is always paved in pain, responsibility, and truth. Resilience isn't about being unaffected by life. It's about being undestroyed by it. It's about choosing courage over comfort again and again until you stop reacting from fear and start living from strength. To aim at the highest good you conceive is not simply a poetic ideal, it is a moral imperative. When you set your sights low, you become a slave to mediocrity, habit, and the narrow comforts of the familiar. But when you orient your life toward the highest possible ideal you can imagine, you pull yourself forward through chaos with intention. That aim becomes a guiding star in a world that will otherwise reduce you to impulse and entropy. The highest good is not pleasure, it's not comfort, nor is it power or status. It's the integrated pursuit of truth, meaning, and sacrifice that elevates the soul rather than placates the ego. It's the commitment to a path that makes you more than what were yesterday. Not by accident, but by deliberate confrontation with your flaws and alignment with something transcendent. You cannot aim at the highest good without also aiming at the destruction of your falsehoods. This aim demands that you act as though your actions matter. That each word, decision, and gesture radiates outward into the world like ripples in a pond. It asks you to shoulder the weight of consequence, to live as though you are both responsible for what is and capable of influencing what could be. The burden is immense, but so is the dignity that accompanies it. When you aim high, you become more than a reactor, you become a participant in the unfolding of order over chaos. Aiming at the highest good requires sacrifice, and not just the comfortable kind. You have to give up bitterness, self-deception, laziness, and the compulsion to blame others for your own inertia. You relinquish your petty grievances in favor of noble burdens. You say no to what is expedient in order to say yes to what is meaningful. Every step toward that higher aim costs you something, but it also transforms you into someone more capable of carrying what matters. The aim also protects you from despair. Life is suffering, there's no avoiding that, but suffering with a direction is radically different from suffering in the void. When your pain is integrated into a meaningful pursuit, it becomes fuel instead of a cage. That's the paradox. The more noble your aim, the more suffering you're likely to encounter, but also the more capable you are of enduring it without disintegrating. And this aim cannot be outsourced. No institution, no ideology, group identity can define it for you. You must wrestle with it yourself. You must ask, what is the greatest good I can serve with the time and breath I've been given? The answer won't come easily, and it shouldn't. It must be earned through silence, contemplation, and action. And when you finally grasp it, even in part, you will realize that the pursuit itself is more clarifying than the arrival. As you refine your aim, your perception sharpens. What once seemed tolerable, disorder in your habits, dishonesty in your speech, cowardice in your choices, now becomes intolerable. You begin to prune away what is weak and cultivate what is strong. The highest aim demands the best of you, and in return, it gives you integrity. You start to speak what you believe, act out what you know to be right, and align your being with what is eternally valuable. This is not a one-time commitment, but a continual recalibration. The good you conceive today may be surpassed by what you conceive tomorrow if you remain humble and alert. The pursuit is infinite because your capacity to grow is infinite. And so the question isn't whether you should aim, but whether you have the courage to aim high enough. The dragon is not merely a symbol of danger or fear, it is the embodiment of everything in your life you refuse to face. It guards the treasure you most need but are most afraid to claim. The dragon is procrastination, resentment, addiction, cowardice, and every unspoken truth buried under layers of avoidance. And when you try to negotiate with it, when you rationalize its presence and excuse its growth or pretend it's not there, it gains strength while you weaken. Negotiation assumes that the dragon can be reasoned with, that you can coexist peacefully with your inner chaos. But that's a lie. The longer you avoid confronting what is festering, the more it metastasizes. Problems do not shrink with time, they compound. Silence feeds monsters. Every excuse you make, every delay you justify is fuel for the fire that will one day burn through the very fabric of your life. To confront the dragon means naming it first. You must say out loud what you're most ashamed of, most afraid of, and most unwilling to examine. You shine light into the corners of your psyche, where shadows have ruled for decades. That's not therapy talk. It's existential truth. If you cannot articulate the nature of your enemy, you will be conquered by it unconsciously. The dragon thrives on your silence, your vagueness, your unwillingness to define your suffering. There is no external authority that will slay the dragon for you. No institution, no ideology, no partner or parent can rescue you from what is yours to face. You must become the one who moves deliberately into the lair, sword in hand. That sword is made of truth. Not weaponized truth used to destroy others, but courageous truth aimed inward, capable of severing your illusions and cutting through your self-deception. Confronting the dragon is an act of moral and psychological violence. But it is violence against falsehood. It is a form of sacred aggression, the kind that rebuilds what has been distorted by years of comfort-seeking and fear-dodging. This is not about anger, it's about disciplined confrontation. The kind that refuses to let you rot in a shell of who you might have been had you faced yourself earlier. Do not dress the dragon up in polite language or spiritual platitudes. Do not call your laziness a season of rest, your fear caution, or your bitterness discernment. This is the negotiation trap, reframing dysfunction to make it palatable. But every misnamed vice is a seed of future suffering. Confrontation begins by calling things what they are. There is no redemption without recognition. When you face the dragon, something primal awakens. You realize that your survival has always depended on your willingness to stand firm when your instincts scream retreat. The moment of confrontation is not clean or elegant. It's messy, painful, humiliating even, but is also the birthplace of transformation. You are never stronger than when you stand alone in front of the chaos you've been avoiding and refuse to move in what you find. If you face it properly, is that the treasure you feared was guarded by death is actually guarded by truth. It was never the dragon that made you weak, but your unwillingness to face it. The power you need is on the other side of confrontation, not compromise. When your words say one thing and your actions say another, you fracture your integrity at its core. People may not always articulate it, but they feel the dissonance. It creates distrust, not just in others, but within yourself. Every time you say something you don't follow through on, you weaken the structure that holds your identity together. It's not merely about being nice or honest. It's about coherence between intention and execution. The human psyche cannot thrive in contradiction. You cannot preach discipline and live in chaos, advocate truth while concealing secrets, or speak about growth while clinging to old patterns. When the spoken self and the acted self diverge, anxiety rises. The subconscious knows it's living a lie, and it will scream until you either correct course or numb yourself into spiritual paralysis. Speech is sacred. It's not noise. Words are a creative force. In ancient texts and psychological traditions alike, speech is what gives shape to reality. If you speak about values you don't embody, you are not shaping reality, you are distorting it. The distortion doesn't just affect others. It corrodes your own credibility. Your internal sense of competence shrinks every time you break alignment. If you want your words to carry weight, your life has to back them up. That doesn't mean you're perfect. It means you're congruent. People respect struggle, failure, and effort far more than empty virtue signaling. You don't earn moral authority by speaking lofty truths. You earn it by bleeding for them in the details of your life. By making the hard decisions when no one is watching. Alignment starts small. If you say you'll be somewhere, show up. If you promise to change a habit, don't just talk about it, alter your environment and make it real. Language sets the vision, but behavior builds the structure. And without the structure, the vision collapses under the weight of its own hypocrisy. The world has enough noise. What it needs, desperately, is people whose words mean something because their lives are evidence of it. Self-respect hinges on alignment. You cannot respect yourself if you habitually betray your own promises. Every unkept word chips away at your self-trust, and when trust in the self is gone, discipline dies with it. You become a leaf in the wind, saying what sounds right in the moment while living in a way that contradicts it. That is not freedom. That is fragmentation. Your words should be an extension of your character, not a performance. If you must perform for the better version of yourself you haven't yet met, the one who already lives in alignment. Speak as if that version of you is listening, because it is. And it will either be nourished or betrayed by what you declare, and whether you follow through, there is no shortcut to alignment. It's carved out through 1,000 hard choices, often invisible, often uncomfortable. But over time, those choices sculpt a foundation so solid that when you speak, people listen. Not because you're loud, but because your life has made your voice undeniable.